Throughout history, God has called his people to go out to the far corners of the world to reach all peoples. The book of Isaiah contains this promise: I will set a sign among them, and I will send some of those who survive to the nations and to the distant islands that have not heard of my fame or seen my glory. They will proclaim my glory among the nations.
For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of...
After my arrival in Jakarta, I travelled along the coast of Java and then to the island of Bali. I am enchanted by these spice islands and the varied ethnic groups residing here. However, beneath a veneer of beauty lies a people of great spiritual need. Many millions need to be reached with the gospel. After my devotional readings in Isaiah today, I feel compelled to go east from Bali, across the deep straits to the island of Lombok, home of the Sasak people. Perhaps in years to come, Christians from around the world will go to this island, so that the Sasak will come to know the love and salvation of our Lord Jesus Christ.
The Sasak of a distant island. Until recently, Lombok, one of Indonesia's eastern islands, has been neglected and untouched by the modern world or the good news of the gospel. Today, Lombok is known for her natural beauty, unspoiled beaches, small fishing village coves, green rice paddies, and impressive Mount Rinjani, one of the highest peaks in Southeast Asia. Lombok Island measures only 50 miles across, but is host to a population approaching 3 million people. Chinese, Indonesians, and Arabs also reside on this small island, as well as neighbouring ethnic groups including the Balinese and Sumbawanese. However, around 85% of the people on Lombok are Sasak. Very few Sasak have ever moved away from their island. Behind the canopy of swaying coconut palm trees which shade their beaches lies an unreached people group, still in the dark and still distant from many of our hearts. Unfortunately, the Sasak are among the least evangelized mega-people groups in the world. Over 70% of the Sasak make their living from agriculture, with the cultivation of rice and various crops or cattle breeding their major occupation. Rice is often stored in their traditional Sasak rice barns. Along the coastline, fishermen also go out for the catch of the day to help feed their family, or to sell their fish in the bustling markets. Baskets, pots, textiles, and souvenirs overflow into dimly lit alleyways, competing for space with food, hardware, and shoppers. Horse-drawn carts are a popular form of transportation throughout the island. The Sasak women are also kept very busy. The weaving of their colourful cloth is still done with a traditional backstrap loom. The skill of pottery making has been passed down through the generations. Sasak pottery is increasingly admired and shipped to destinations around the world. Some unique cultural forms of entertainment have also been preserved through the centuries. Graceful dancers in elaborate costumes move to the sound of a Sasak gamelan orchestra, often heard at weddings and cultural shows. As night falls, a white sheet is hung, a flaming candle is lit, and Wyong musicians and puppeteers recount ancient Sasak stories to the enchantment of their audience. The Sasak wedding is usually an elaborate community event. The bride, groom and family members dress in traditional Sasak attire. The festivities include visitation at both family houses and processions through the streets. A unique Sasak cultural proposal is given by a kinship group of the groom to the family of the bride. This involves laughter, gift-giving and traditional song. 60% of all marriages occur between first and second cousins, and another 30% between third cousins. Sadly, divorces are quite frequent. The average man or woman is married 3 times. Over the centuries, the Sasak have been influenced by the blending of various religious influences. The ancestors of the Sasak were animists, many of whom became adherents to a form of Buddhism. In the 14th century, influences of Hinduism came to Lombok. In the beginning of the 16th century, Islamic missionaries from Java proceeded to the eastern islands. Most, very novice in Islamic teachings, blended Orthodox Islam and traditional animistic folk religion into what has become known as Wetu Telu. Orthodox Islam got a boost by the arrival in the 17th century of Muslim Buginese seafarers. Today, most Sasak are Muslim. They attempt to uphold the 5 orthodox religious duties: confession of faith in Allah and Muhammad as his prophet, prayer 5 times a day, almsgiving, keeping the month of fasting, and pilgrimage to Mecca. Lombok is often referred to as the land of 1,000 mosques. However, now there are nearly 7,000 Muslim places of worship on this small island. Reportedly, Orthodox Islamic leaders have a goal of seeing a mosque or prayer house every 100 yards. When compared to other areas of Indonesia, Lombok has one of the highest percentages of people who have been on the pilgrimage to Mecca. The Sasak have a reputation within Indonesia as being staunch adherents to Islam. On Fridays, the streets regularly overflow with entire communities making their ritual journey to the nearest mosque for noonday prayers. For most Sasak, this is the routine, the only acceptable norm. Today there are around 30 Islamic leaders maintaining significant power over their followers who hold them in the highest esteem. However, these revered Islamic leaders are in direct competition with one another and have set up their own orthodox schools. In the early 1980s, there were already over 420 schools and universities. And today, 300 full-time Muslim missionaries are still intent on keeping Lombok strictly a Muslim island governed by the Quran. A small but nevertheless significant number of Sasak follow Wetu Telu, with various theories behind the meaning of the name. Most Wetu Telu stress the importance of threes, 3 stones, 3 times, or 3 ways. Today, followers of Wetu Telu are concentrated mostly on the northern tip of Lombok and tend to be more geographically, economically, and culturally isolated. Wetu Telu is found nowhere else in the world. It represents a blending of pre-Islamic Sasak belief with elements of Islam and Balinese Hinduism, while also emphasizing spirit worship and ritual feasts. An ancient temple was recently renovated as a reminder of the longevity and resilience of this Sasak tradition. The rebuilding process included a dedication ceremony involving the sacrifice of a bull. In an attempt to get more power for healing, each priest stepped into a ditch filled with the bull's blood. The temple itself abounds with overwhelming symbolic depictions of animistic origin. Wetu Tulu still exists, but it's only tolerated by most Muslims as adat, or local custom, but not as religious tradition. Yet even more ancient than Wetu Tulu is the Sasak practice of Buddhism. However, it's perhaps more similar to Wetu Tulu than it is to Chinese Buddhism. Despite its role in Sasak history, today only a few Buddhist Sasak villages remain. Another example of syncretism is depicted at Lingsa Temple, where thousands from Islamic, Wetu Tulu or Hindu faiths come to perform their individual ceremonial rites. Various kinds of offerings are made, pleading for fertile crops, peace, security, and good fortune. The Sasak are resistant to change, originating from outside their tightly knit community. They would rather carry on with their established core values than to see any of their community embrace new ideas. Many of those who do receive some education go to Islamic schools that teach mainly Arabic and religion. Education and literacy are growing among the Sasak, with many more children schooled in the Indonesian language. Yet for most, Sasak remains their heart language as well as their trade language. Tourism is on the rise. Since 1990, a number of international hotels have opened on the west coast, with plans to expand to the south coast as well. An international airport is scheduled to be built in the center of the island. Development and modernization are also on the rise. However, it's largely the non-Sasak who are capitalizing on new entrepreneurial activities. The gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, with the poor primarily comprised of the Sasak people. There is sometimes an adverse effect of tourism on the Sasak people. Farmers' flatlands are sold to hotels, and entire villages become displaced by new hotels. Many employees hired by new hotels are experienced workers from Bali rather than local Sasak. Only a few Sasak benefit from jobs and increased craft sales. The vast majority of subsistence farmers face land shortages and inadequate water supplies. Healthcare among the Sasak is a critical need. Even today, Lombok has the highest infant mortality rate in all of Indonesia. Christian workers have been ministering to the Sasak in a variety of ways. Healthcare teams have come reaching out with physical care while addressing concerns of spiritual nurture and prayer. Local radio programming and broadcast in the Sasak language are touching people's lives with a gospel witness. Culturally relevant evangelistic videos in the Sasak language are being utilized. Tracts, booklets, portions of Bible translations, and printed material in Sasak, as well as in the Indonesian language, are also being produced and distributed among the Sasak people. As of 1995, there were perhaps 50 to 100 young Sasak believers, yet no indigenous Sasak church. However, these believers represented the fringes of Sasak society, coming primarily from families of mixed marriages. Members of the 15 or so Indonesian churches on the island are almost entirely non-Sasak. Workers are in the beginning stages of helping to form groups of Sasak believers for the purpose of planting new churches.
My family and I live and work among the Sasak people, a people deeply entrenched in empty religious practices. I have become convinced that nothing short of the mighty hand of God will break through the darkness covering the island of Lombok. Yet God has chosen to accomplish His work through ordinary people who are committed to Him. There are many ways you can contribute to this task.
Why not come to Lombok on a short-term trip and be involved in prayer, evangelism, and exposure to the needs and opportunities to minister among the Sasak? As a church or group, you may consider adopting the Sasak people. Career opportunities are also available through partnering with Indonesian companies or in tent-making through international business ventures such as hotel development, hotel management, tourism, import-export, mining, and education. Local Christians with a burden to pray and minister, as well as those with an entrepreneurial spirit, are vitally needed. Those who have a heart for God's mission to all nations, but are unable to go to the Sasak, could consider participating in other ways, through offering financial support or through a commitment to pray.
A fellow worker on a nearby island, after some 35 years of praying for the Sasak people, recently said, "I believe that now is the time for Lombok." After several years of living and working in Lombok, I agree. I believe that the Sasak people can and must be reached with the gospel, but the task will not be easy. Those of us who are working here need God's people who will hear the call of the Sasak people and respond with their lives and their resources and their prayers so that the good news can be preached on this island.
You can join in prayer with Christians from around the world.
Father, I pray that more workers will be called to reach the Sasak. Enable them to be unified as one and lead holy lives before you.
God, we join together in prayer, in asking you to use every way possible to show your love to the Sasak people.
Lord, I pray that long-term visas, jobs, and creative opportunities would be provided for those seeking to make an impact by living among the Sasak.
Father, I pray for the workers ministering among the Sasak, that they would have strength to press on and that all necessary resources and finances would be provided.
Lord, please open doors of opportunity into the mainstream of Sasak society and move miraculously in the hearts of Islamic leaders.
Lord, we pray that soon there will be an indigenous Sasak church reaching out to their own people.
The Sasak people are in a spiritual and social transition that is starting to make them more receptive and open. Now is the time to bring the light of God's love and word to them in a way they can understand and follow. In Isaiah, God has promised that His glory will be proclaimed among the distant islands that have not heard of His fame or seen His glory. Will you participate in God's work as He declares His glory among the nations, among the Sasak of a distant island?
And preach the gospel to all creation. Go you into the world and preach the gospel to everyone.